and this may come as a surprise to many of you, will forever, forever love this album. But I do still love her, I promise. Hello, and welcome back to my channel. Back with another Taylor Swift video, and this time it is a Taylor Swift ranking video. So I love doing these ranking videos and people apparently love to see them as well. So let's go. Today we are going to be ranking my personal opinion on Taylor Swift's albums. Now this is going to be controversial. It doesn't mean I hate any of these albums, it's just the order that I'm personally putting them in. I know people will be offended by some of them, but it is just my own personal ranking. If you want to tell me your ranking in the comments, you can. I in fact welcome you to do that, but don't attack me for mine, and I won't attack you for yours, maybe. Only kidding. But yeah, today we're going to be go through that. So at number 11, in terms of my least favourite Taylor Swift album, we do have Debut. Now I just want to say, I love Debut. I think Debut is fantastic. It's got some of my favourite Taylor Swift songs on this album. But compared to Taylor's other albums, I personally just don't like this as much. You know, I think it's because there are some songs I just skip. Now, that's not me saying I hate the song, it's just that I'm not always in the mood for the song, I'm not as big of a fan of the song. I don't hate this album by any means. Mary's Song is one of my all-time favourite Taylor songs. I love Our Song, I love Should Have Said No. Tim McGraw is also a beautiful song, A Place in This World. There are so many great songs, but there are also some songs I do just skip, and I skip a few of these on this album, and that is why it's just a little bit lower than the others. That doesn't mean I don't like it, and it doesn't mean I'm not excited for the Taylor's version of this, because of course I am. Now with the Taylor's version for Debut, whenever it comes out, I think I'm most excited for the actual songs that we already know rather than the vault tracks, because I think for the vault tracks for this, we probably will have heard them before in some capacity in terms of unreleased songs, so that's why I'm more excited for the actual songs. Whereas with Rep TV, because we don't have that as of time of recording, I'm more excited to hear the vault tracks from that, because her voice will be most similar to the normal tracks, and I don't believe we will have heard of any of the Rep TV vault tracks. Like, I don't think any of them leaked, so that's why I'm most excited for that in terms of the vault, but this in terms of the vocals. I'm not saying I hate it, it's just that it's probably, I would rank it as my least favourite, even though it's got some of my favourite Taylor songs on. I would probably pick those songs rather than just shuffling this album. And at number 10, we have Reputation. Now maybe I've ranked these two lowest because they're the stolen versions. Perhaps that is the case, and it very well might be the case. I think another reason why this is ranked slightly lower is just because of how much people talk about Reputation nowadays. I think I'm so tired of seeing Rep TV whenever Taylor does anything and everything, people are like, I wish she'd done Rep instead. I think that's why it's just a little bit lower, but that doesn't mean I dislike it, because there are so many songs on Rep I love, but New Year's Day is probably one of my least favourite Taylor songs, so I think I have to rank it in this position. It's not that I hate it, because I love so many songs on Reputation. I loved being a fan during this era and just showing Taylor that I will stick by her no matter what. You know, I always believed her throughout the whole Snakegate drama, and I think that's why so many people have an attachment to this album, because we were there for Taylor when she was at her lowest and stuff. You know, the fans were still supporting her, and we were ready for when she came back from that break. So we do still really, really love this, even though it is ranked at number 10. At number 9, we have The Torture Poets Department. It's another one where I don't dislike the album. I think this one is a little bit lower, especially when it comes to the anthology, because there are so many tracks that ultimately there are some tracks that I'm not as big a fan of. And I do find myself going to this album and shuffling it, I think because it's the most recent album as of time of recording, and maybe it'll just take a little bit more time for me to grow with it. You know, for so many of the other Taylor songs, I've grown up with these songs, these albums, whereas this one, it's the newest one, you know, that's why I'm probably not as attached to it as the others. However, it's an incredible album, and it does also have some of my favourite Taylor songs. So Long London is a beautiful, stunning song. I love that so much. I Could Do It With a Broken Heart is so great. I also think because we didn't get a full era with this album, maybe that's why I'm a little bit detached from it as well, because we only really got one full music video. I know we got I Could Do It With a Broken Heart, but that that's not a music video in the same way as like some of Taylor's other music videos, so that's why it's ranked just a little bit lower. But I do love so many of the tracks on here, but there are a few that I do skip. My least favourite on this album is probably Robin. That's probably one of my least favourite Taylor songs as well, whereas some people adore that song, and I do think it's down to personal circumstance. I personally can't relate to that one, so I think that's why it's a little bit lower. That's not me saying I hate it, because I don't hate it by any way, means, shape or form. It's just a little bit lower just because I think I've not got as attached to it. I think that's why. And number 9, we have Lover. I love Lover. Lover is very much my aesthetic. I wish the era had gone on for longer, and I think this is just another case of detachment, because obviously this era was cut short because of the pandemic. We never got a Lover tour, so maybe that's why I'm not as attached to it. But in terms of the aesthetic of this era, I love it. If there's any ever Lover merch, I'm like, yes, straight in my basket. I love the Lover merch. I just think there are a few songs that I do skip on this album. Notably, It's Nice to Have a Friend. I don't really like that one. And So You'll Get Better is too sad for me to listen to, but I love so many of the tracks on this album. You know, Cornelia Street and Death by a Thousand Cuts are some of Taylor's greatest songs ever. I think because there are a few skips, and because maybe I'm not as attached to it because the era was cut short, maybe that's why it's a little bit lower, but I do still adore this album. And ultimately, I have to rank these, you know, I have to put them in some kind of order, and it is difficult because I adore these albums, but I feel in my heart that this was the right way to go. But I do still love Lover, and I feel like this album ranking changes all the time, so maybe by the time I've released this my ranking will have changed, but right now this is the current ranking. So we have Fearless. I love Fearless. It was the first of our Taylor's versions. I will forever love Fearless. It's just the perfect teenage album. It's the album you love when you're a teenager. And I'm not a teenager anymore, but I still adore this album. It's fantastic, it's amazing, and we're so lucky that Taylor wrote this album. This was the album that really brought Taylor, I think, to the world stage, especially in terms of me living in the UK. This is the album that introduced me to Taylor with Love Story. It's got some of her greatest music videos with You Belong With Me and Love Story, so we're very lucky that this album exists. There are some songs that I skip in it, but I do find myself reaching for this album quite a lot because it is a stunning album. Maybe this one's a little bit lower because we didn't get a full era for Fearless Taylor's version, so I am kind of ranking it as well in terms of that, in terms of my attachment to it. I think this Taylor's version, because it was the first one, she kind of viewed it as a passion project, didn't know if the fans would support it in the same way, and I don't love the cover of this. I like the cover of Fearless Taylor's version. I just think because a lot of the photo shoot is basically this photo and that photo, like that's pretty much it, I was a little bit disappointed and underwhelmed, but also that's only comparing it to future Taylor's versions where she did full photo shoots and even music videos for them, so I think I'm comparing it to that. But I do love Fearless. Fearless is fantastic, and I love how much her vocals have grown from when she first released Fearless to when she released the Taylor's version, so I will forever, forever love this album, but I just love some of the other ones a little bit more, and that's why she's at this spot. At number 6, we have Evermore. Evermore has my second favourite Taylor song ever, Right Where You Left Me. It is an incredible album, and the reason I think I popped it at this spot is because it's a sister album. With a sister album, you're always going to compare her to this sister. And personally for me, in terms of an album, I think Folklore is the better album. I think Evermore has the better songs, but Folklore works better as an album, and that's kind of how we're ranking this on rather than individual songs, how it works really as an album for me personally. Some people will completely disagree with that, and that is okay, that is fine. Evermore is a beautiful album. It's a very sad album, it's a very wintry album. It was great to have, you know, during 2020, this was towards the end of 2020, it was still great to have this, and I think we really needed something from Taylor during 2020, you know, we were all going through so much that it was nice that she just released some music for us. You know, she released 2 albums that year and it was incredible, and I love this album, I really, really do, and it's hard to rank it at number 6, it really is, but I feel in my heart that this is where I'm going to rank it. But I do adore this album, and I really want to stress I do adore this album. It's just comparing it to her sister. If this was the only album in terms of like the Folklore Evermore kind of saga, I would rank this higher. It's just comparing it to her sister that it is a little bit lower, but I do still love her, I promise. At number 5, we have Speak Now, Taylor's version. Love Speak Now, I do. I personally don't think the vault tracks added to this in the same way that it did for the other Taylor's versions. this is probably my least favourite vault of all of them. I like I Can See You and I like Castles Crumbling, but the other ones for me just weren't, I wasn't in love with them, and I don't think they added to the album. Whereas with Red, I really think they added to the album, and Fearless the same, 1989 the same. I love this album still. Story of Us is such a good song. I love The Story of Us, but I would just rank it a little bit lower just because of the Taylor's version, I think, just because I wasn't as big a fan of the vault. And so in terms of the whole body, it's a little bit lower than some of the other albums. I think it definitely was higher before the Taylor's version. That's not me saying I don't like the Taylor's version. I do. I will only listen to the Taylor's version, yes, including Better Than Revenge. But in terms of the body of work, it's just a little bit lower. But obviously, it's still pretty high up at number 5, and it's still one of my favourite albums ever out of any artist. Like, that's the thing you've got to remember with this ranking. Even though they may be lower on my Taylor Swift album ranking, they are still higher up than most albums out there. So I do love Speak Now, but I had to give a bit of a reasoning why it was a little bit lower. And number 4, and this may come as a surprise to many of you, Midnights. I think Midnights is one of Taylor's most underrated albums, and yes, it was streamed a ridiculous amount of times. It broke all these records. And yes, it did win Grammy for Album of the Year and Pop Vocal Album. But I think it's underrated. I think because it's got these pop and synth beats, people are like, oh, I don't like it. And when 1989 TV came out, they're like, oh my gosh, they've like ruined it with the like Midnight's production. No. Midnight's production is incredible, and if every single Taylor Swift song was produced exactly the same, it would be boring. I think it's unique, it's interesting. I love the way Jack Antonoff produces songs, and I always think it's very funny when people are like, Jack's a bad producer, and then their favourite song is Getaway Car. Come on, guys. It's just different, and I like that. I like it. I love the vocals on this. I love the songs. The lyrics on this are some of Taylor's most heartbreaking, and I think because they're upbeat, the songs itself, like the synth beats and everything, people think they're not that sad, but they are. The only downside of this is that there's so many different versions of the album. There's no complete version out there in terms of a physical version. I would love that, but I think this album is stunning and so unbelievably underrated, and it features my favourite Taylor song, which is You Rang Your Own Kid. So I really love Midnights. And number 3, we have Red, Taylor's version. Red, I grew up with this album. It came out when I was 12 years old, and obviously when I was 12, I did not relate to like a single song on this album. But what's great about Taylor's songs, especially with Red, is that it's such a personal album. This has some of her most personal lyrics that are very relatable only to her in terms of the actual lyric. Like All Too Well is the story of this relationship she had, but you can relate it to your own life, whether it's a romantic relationship, a friendship, anything like that. You can relate it to so many different things, and I think that's why Red's so good. It was the first step away from the magical fairy tale-ness of love and going into this heartbreak, and for that I will forever love Red, because it's been there for me throughout my life, you know, throughout my teenage years, going into my 20s, and to be honest, I think maybe sometimes I would rank this at number 1. I think I'm just used to my top 2 so much, but I think this album is incredible. I will forever love it. The tour for this album was great. The Taylor's version vault tracks added to this album. It's an incredible album. I think if I was to ever recommend a Taylor Swift album to anyone, it would be Red. I think, especially because I grew up with it, I think that's why I'm so attached to it. But even so, the lyrics on this, everything about it is incredible. I love Red. And number 2, we have Folklore. It is Evermore's sister. I'm so sorry to Evermore, but I just would rank this a little bit higher. I think just because of a body at work, it works better. I love the different lyrics referencing Cardigan, like, because it's mentioned in Betty as well as mentioned in, obviously, the Cardigan song. The song called Cardigan, and I just love the intertwining of it and how it tells a story. I love this album. It's what we needed, I said, during 2020. It really was, because we were all going through so much, and yes, it doesn't solve anything. It didn't solve how awful life was during 2020, but it helped so many of us when we were feeling so isolated, because music brings people together like nothing else can, and for that I will forever be appreciative of Taylor for releasing this album and just for this music, because I think we needed it. I think Epiphany is, for some people it's their least favourite on the album, but for me it represents that really dark time of 2020, and I think we often forget about it. We often try to put it to the back of our minds, but when we really think about how isolated and lonely we were and how much we were all going through, I think Epiphany perfectly represents that. I'm very grateful for that song. So yeah, I love Folklore, I think it's incredible, so that's why it's at number 2. And at number 1, it could be anything else than 1989. I think a lot of this is through the nostalgia and because of how much I love the 1989 era. It's the era I met Taylor, she interacted with me so much on Tumblr, she interacted with so many fans and stuff. It was the first time she had the Let Out wristbands on the tour, the songs were upbeat, the songs were such a change from Red. It came out when I was 14, you know, this was the album that was going into my teenage years. Like, I love this album. It's so much fun. It taught me to be carefree, like shake it off, and to embrace the things people say about you with blank space, you know, to laugh about it, because the best way to deal with these things is to laugh about it and to shake it off. Where people say horrible things about you, whether it's at school or online or anything like that. And I think this album is so much fun, and it's such a fun era on the Eras tour. I will forever love Red. But yeah, I will forever love 1989. She is such a special album, and I'm very glad we have her. And they are my Taylor Swift album rankings. I probably forgot an album now. I'm trying to like look at my like albums next to me because I have my CDs next to me, but I think I got them all. But I loved all of Taylor's albums. Like, even if I ranked it at number 11, it doesn't mean I hate the album. I love the album. I love all of Taylor's albums. Her music, she's my favourite artist for a reason. She is a fantastic, incredible artist, and we're so lucky to have her and for her to be making this incredible music that so many of us across the world relate to, you know. So many people found my videos because they have a shared love of Taylor's music, and I made videos because I wanted to talk about my love of Taylor's music, and I've made so many friends through that, and I'll forever be grateful for Taylor for giving us this to create this community. Because yes, there are the downsides, and trust me, I've had my fair share of negative comments from people in this community, but I've had far more people being positive and people being lovely, getting to meet people at shows, getting to meet my friends who I've been friends with online for years at shows. Music brings us together like nothing else can, so I'll forever be grateful for Taylor Swift for releasing these incredible albums. And just because they're ranked lower doesn't mean I'd hate them, it just means that my personal opinion on those albums. But let me know in the comments what your album ranking is, and let me know what sorts of videos you guys want to see from me. Do you want to see more ranking videos, more CD videos? Are there any CDs or vinyl you particularly want to see? Please let me know in the comments, because I want to make videos that you guys want to see on this channel. Thank you so much for watching. If you're returning to the channel, thank you so much for returning. It means the absolute world that you wanted to come back and see me rant about whatever and anything. But if you're new to the channel, it would mean the absolute world to me if you could subscribe. So yeah, thank you so much for supporting me on the channel. Make sure to like it if you enjoyed this video. Tell me your Taylor Swift album ranking in the comments, and as always, have a great day!